Hi everybody, I'm Patrick. I'm the gallery lead here. We're going to walk to the exhibition. If you haven't gotten to see it yet, it's of this wonderful person's work. I'm going to talk a little bit about why Heather's here, and then talk about Heather herself. So, Gallery A2's Visiting Artist in Residence program will spotlight nationally acclaimed local artists manifesting the potential of artisans. Asylum is a nucleus of innovation and excellence in fabrication, craft, and aesthetics. The program encompasses 3 components: a bespoke exhibition, a 2-month artist residency, and expansive programming built around the artist's skills as both a maker and educator. Gallery A2 is building sustainable systems with lasting impact for Artisans Asylum and the Boston community. Heather White is an artist, a tenured professor at the Massachusetts College of Art and Design, a Fulbright scholar, a lecturer, and a curator based here in Boston. Her studio jewelry explores themes of cultural deviations within assumed conformity, blending highly skilled traditional gold and silversmithing techniques with the innovational perspective of a contemporary artist. At Artisans Asylum, Heather is presenting the Allegorical Locket series and Blind Artifacts as part of her current body of work on display at the newly established Gallery A2. The exhibition features a dynamic range of pieces, including wearable adornments, stop-motion animation videos, and experimental waxes that showcase the creative process before and after casting. As a special bonus, attendees can experiment with forming sheet metal using a hydraulic press, offering a hands-on experience central to Heather's creative methodology. Heather's work has been exhibited internationally and will be featured in the prestigious 2025 Schmuck in Munich, Germany. Often referred to as the Venice Biennale of Contemporary Jewelry, her pieces are part of permanent collections of renowned institutions, including the Museum of Art and Design in New York City, the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, the Mint Museum in Charlotte, and the Renwick Gallery at the Smithsonian American Museum in Washington, D.C. Thank you, Heather. She is doing a wonderful upcoming class here just for Valentine's Day. She'll probably talk a little bit about that tonight.
I can.
Yes. And there is a sense of like play and joyfulness in this class that I hope you all take in. I think especially what Artisans does is, especially when we are teaching here, we create these little moments of making and of sharing with each other, and they're all bite-sized and really affordable. Pay attention to Heather's pricing.
Thank you. Ooh, that's hard to live up to. I'm going to start with this, and hopefully it'll stop. Michael, we need. So when I heard this singing, it's so uplifting, right? It reminded me of the strength and purpose of the arts. And in this social climate, in this political climate, in this weather climate, the arts are necessary. And whether you're a singer-songwriter like Carla Ryder, my good friend who happens to be here, or you're the listener, whether you're the dancer, choreographer, or the witness, art is giving and receiving. And my work doesn't save lives like these amazing men who flew in from South Africa. But what I manifest, I hope it makes life worth living. I hope it brings joy, and I hope it brings beauty into the world. So that's my start. I was hoping that song would stop me from shaking. So I'm going to do the slideshow and presenter view. Okay, let's see. Ruh-roh, I need a little help here. Can I expand this, Michael?
Yeah, hit the green button.
Oh, my 13-year-old knows which one. Come over here. Can you do it?
Where's your cursor?
Oh, thank you. And then, but it should go full screen, right? Exit to full screen. Like that top part should go.
If you hit switch. Okay, that's where my.
Okay, let's try it again, Michael. I want it to be the full shebang. Yeah, that's what we want. Perfect. Okay. So before we start, the lecture is a little over 30 minutes. So it's crowded in here. I know it's, but it's 30 minutes. But first, I want to give a really strong shout out to Libby Masek, Interim Executive Director, and under her leadership this past year, A2 Gallery Material Artist. So. And I'd like to give a couple other just quick shout outs to gallery lead Patrick Gogan, who invited both Maria Pedro and I here. And not only curated the show, but actually like built the walls and installed everything. Troy Wade, the photographer and videographer extraordinaire. Jewelry shop lead Lori Berezin, who spent a lot of time with me. Scraps, an amazing tool tester and sculpture. Hillary Dorsick, another amazing tool tester who's here tonight. Blue Vermeer, the event coordinator. And finally, Michael Middleman, who put together this lecture series. Thank you so much. Okay, so here I am. I'm going to begin with my personal artist manifesto. You know what? There might be another chair up here, Effie. You good?
Yeah, we've got
Yeah,
more
there's
chairs.
enough. Come on up. So I'll just start to read it. Body adornment is unique because once it's touched and worn, it participates in society, weaving in and out of everyday life, coming in contact with fresh eyes at every turn. Jewelry is never fixed, it's always moving. When you think of fine art, so often it's still, it's stayed, but jewelry is always moving. Jewelry's power accrues when passed from one generation to the next. How many of you have jewelry from a loved one? And it keeps you with them, it keeps them with you, right? Jewelry's meaning can transmute depending upon the body on which it is worn. We see that in photography a lot. Jewelry can exist covertly or be ostentatious. It's always in dialogue with context, sight, and ceremony. Jewelry is never neutral. It's always signaling, marking, and beckoning. Jewelry attends meetings, parties, the grocery store. It goes outdoors, it goes indoors, it travels, right? The confluence of life existing with art is what fuels me as a studio maker jeweler. Okay. So my mother is a second generation Lithuanian. She's pictured holding my sister. And my father is a fourth generation Irishman. And having grown up not too far away in Providence, Rhode Island, with one of my childhood friends over here, I grew up American. And my mom made that patriotic poncho. Yep. And my grandmother, who I'll talk about it, and made my dress and my sister's dress. My sister's is the tall blonde wearing the red dress. But my grandmother made almost all of our clothes growing up. My grandfather seated in the center in the white suit. Can you all see my cursor? Yeah. Oh, great. Oh, that's good. Okay. Graduated from Rhode Island School of Design in 1931 in machine design. My father graduated from Rhode Island School of Design in machine design. And I graduated from Rhode Island School of Design in jewelry and metals. And we took all of our core courses in the same building. Yeah, lineage. So this was, forgive me, I have a little bit of a cold. I'm not contagious, but I'm just going to be sniffling over here. This was my Hyde Park studio, and one of my former studio mates knows this space really well. I had a remarkable window, and I could see outside when I was inside into this expanse of nature. And it was important at that time because so much of my work had to do with nature and the body. And this is my jeweler's bench. You can see my soldering station under the lamp there. And when I would go in with my studio, my day would begin something like this. I would come to my studio, I'd open the door, I'd shut the door, and I would undress because I would start molding the body. And here I am. I poured the mold on, pulling the mold from the body, cutting and shaping the mold, and reinforcing it with plaster. So Germano Celant is this Italian historian, critic, and he wrote this article that really resonates with my work, and it's entitled "To Cut is to Think." And here I'm dipping the mold. And in it he writes, art has gone from the imitation of reality, right, to the construction of reality. And you can think of it, trying to imitate, oh, that looks exactly like what it's supposed to look like, to the construct of something new and exciting and inventive, right? He goes on to say the Cubists with Pablo Picasso and George Braque were the first ones to cut out images and do this. Disarrange, rearrange them in order to forge new relationships with the object, right? Art is an autonomous act of knowing. So this is a plan for a teapot I've had on hold since I left that studio many years ago. And I am going to electroform, I'm going to electroform the belly and construct the handles and the teapot with sterling silver. And I can't wait to make it. It's one of those pieces I need time and space for. But I also want to give a big nod to the Victorian collage artists who worked well before the Cubists, well before Pablo Picasso. And they were cutting, arranging, disarranging, and rearranging and forging new relationships, okay? So it's really important to look through, and I'm sure there are other instances and other histories and other cultures where this exists too. So a little bit about my process with this series that leads into the series that's in the gallery. It's called Botanical Fictions. And here are some waxes being arranged. And at that time, I was invited to be in this book called Penland Book of Jewelry, Master Classes in Jewelry Techniques. And I wrote that chapter and after having our first child, my partner and I. And it was, how long ago, Patrick? 3 weeks ago, I think, because I told you that this piece got acquired to the Smithsonian at the Randolph. Because we were waiting to put out advertisement, I'm like, wait, I'm going to find out next week. So 20 years ago, even 20 years ago, because that's how long I made that, I was asking, what is a master craftsman? What is a mistress, a craftsperson? Right? What is that? And it's widely accepted and wholeheartedly rejected by academics that 10,000 hours of experience are required to create a master. And when I was asked to partake in this book, I tallied up my hours, and I met the quota. And this brooch, who's being worn by one of the artists in the back here, Tia Dale, and actually we took this video together. It's made of sterling silver belly buttons mounted on gold springs. Oops. Hold on. There we go. Okay. So here's another piece from the Botanical Fiction series entitled Black-Eyed Susan. And what happens with this series is you look at the pieces and there are these beautiful, or flowers, corsage brooches. They're fairly large. And then at second look, the piece reveals another layer of information. It's a latent quality, but once you see that the petals are cast from closed eyelids, there's no going back, right? You see this and you can't see it any other way. So I cast, and I continue to cast jewelry in metal and also polyurethane. So polyurethane is a fancy word for plastic. we have this really interesting relationship with plastic that we didn't have when I made these. You know, back then I would say, oh, well, we start the day by putting toothbrushes in our mouths that are plastic. And we still start the day with toothbrushes that are plastic in our mouth, but we know how harmful certain plastics are to the environment. But at that time, polyurethane was so desirable to me as an artist because one, it has intrinsic color, the color goes all the way through, and two, it's light, right? So as a jeweler, I could make large pieces. And so often, you know, wearability is important to me as a jeweler, and if I wanted to make something large, I'd always have to change my design or the way I made it, but the urethane is incredibly light. So these are all hand cast out of urethane, and here it is modeling it, and if you haven't seen it, but you may see it now, but the petals are made from cast teeth. So here are my, and it might seem odd, but when you look at historical referencing, here's my next kin in the art world, Victorian mourning jewelry, right? Often uses hair in either braiding or plaiting. And then, of course, Archimboldo, in which fragments of nature are constructed to make a human figure. So there, and again, there's other references. These are ones that I just, I respond to. This piece is called Bluebell, and I found an orchid in our house that had, and I'm like, wow, it's got 10 flowers. And then, bam, the piece came forward. So I just cast my fingertips, and why do I use my own body? Well, it's because it's free. You know, I don't have to hire somebody. So I cast my fingertips and put raw pigment inside. I made a few rings. These are also cast belly buttons or navels. And a collector wanted their pinky ring, their pinky to be a pinky ring. And so that's actually photographed on my hand, so it didn't fit my pinky. So this is a small drawing, really tiny drawing I presented to my mother and my grandmother in the kitchen on one Thanksgiving holiday. And while the men were watching a rousing game of football in the living room, my mother and grandmother agreed to my project in the kitchen. So this piece is called, it's called Milk Flower, and I took the stem of a humble carnation and I cast it, and along with the petals. And the flowers, of course, are made from 3 generations of cast nipples. And this piece is actually in a collector's home, and she wears it. And you wouldn't know it, but it's one of those pieces. That was a piece that was very difficult to sell. Yeah. And this one is called 8 Marks of Beauty. And I invited different people into my studio who had overt beauty marks or birthmarks on their bodies, and I invited them to my studio and I cast them in gold. And it was one of the first pieces that was more collaborative when I invited people to come in, and it reinforced the platform of body as jewelry for me. And it made a nice segue into the next investigation, which was body as landscape. On the left, this is a 15th century woodcut, most likely done by a medical student. And I love how abstract it becomes in studying it. And so often as a jeweler, I see everything through my jeweler's loop. So I can't see the big picture, but I can see everything so tiny and clearly when it's small. And then on the right is a 3D. When 3D printing first came, it started to be used and was just being used in the medical industry. It's a trachea, and I helped this doctor from Harvard custom make tracheas for children who needed transplants, but I wasn't 3D printing. I was actually doing the molding, and then he went on to 3D print. But it's really fun when art and science intertwine. So out of that came the Rosso series. And I made this with cast polyurethane and carved wood. And this is an incredibly labor-intensive chain. All the math is on the right. It graduates from 0 gauge, which is about as thick as my pinky, all the way down to a tiny, tiny gauge, 20 gauge, 32 thousandths of an inch. 0.8 millimeters. And this was the piece called Coltivando con Rosso. And I think I'll show you the picture. This is the show installed at Mobilia Gallery. If you haven't been to Mobilia Gallery on Huron Street in Cambridge, I invite you to do so.
Does it still exist?
Yes. Yeah, they moved from their larger space to their original space, just a couple doors down. And Libby and Joanne are wonderful, and you can see some incredible jewelry there. But this research led to Alchemia School of Contemporary Jewelry, and I applied for a Fulbright, and I got it, and I was able to teach and study there. And here we are. I was teaching the students how to do cast polyurethane. You can see the ventilation system is outside. All the colors in the molds, our group shot. I still keep in touch with some of these folks. This goes back, it's now 13 years ago. And then Patrick mentioned I'm a curator, so I did take out one whole curatorial endeavor that I did, but I just wanted to show you, this was one of my curatorial forays, and I had my students create half of a neck piece. And then I asked the students in Alchemia to make half of a neck piece. And it was like, okay, well, what constitutes half, right? And then when I got there, I took the pieces and I made full neck pieces. And we were like, when are we going to display these on? I couldn't, those walls are 200-year-old walls that you can't nail in. So the scaffolding, the scaffoldings outside had these yellow wooden floors and these boards, and we brought them in and nailed all the work on. And that's Chichila, the studio cat, who it was as friendly as she looks there, but we loved her. Okay. So that's an installation of some of the Rosso work. And so what's growing in these pieces is the polyurethane, right? And what's stayed and what's fixed is the wood. So it's an inversion of duality. And you'll see the duality appear again. And here's the debut of the ellipse or the oval. And there's the Rosso. And you can see the graduation of the chain. It's a hard piece to photograph. It's hard to really sense it. And that's one of my favorite ones. That's our youngest, and who was with us at 9 months old and learned to walk on Italian soil. And I love this piece because Bia is consuming the jewelry. It kind of made it go full circle, right? And this was the oldest child at the time, who was in 2nd grade. And I just want to say, if you have children and want to travel, do it, because they're such a wonderful, they open doors and opportunities to places and to things and experiences. Okay, so at this point, there was a big change. No longer could I keep my studio. I had to put it in storage, right? I didn't have those 4, 6, 8-hour days in the studio. And for a year, I searched. I was like, I need a portable way of working. I need some transferable skill that I can actually take with me, right? And I thought it would be crochet. So I took all these crochet workshops. And I suck at crochet. I'm like, I can't crochet. I needed a way to carry my internal studio with me. And I found it. It was there all the time. It was the wax, right? And I found my space. It was in the periphery of my eye, right? So I could take this wax with me anywhere, and I could mold it and form it with my fingers, right? And in the schoolyard, in mundane moments of life, I could be an artist. Sitting on a train, and then if a child came over and squished the wax, it made it more beautiful, right? So I just completely changed the way that I worked. That's some on the counter. Those represent all the Zoom meetings that I had. So what I did was I just untethered myself from like the constructs of traditional metalsmithing. and traditional processes and machinery. And I could take my portable studio anywhere. There are a bunch of these that Patrick hand-selected for my studio that are in the show. And you can see there's like dog hair in them. It's like everything. Everything is in there, and I want it to be in there. So a little bit about the process. So I take these wax forms and I sprue them and do something called the lost wax cast process. And I'm sure many of you are familiar. I'll describe it a little bit, but you can see those, they're called sprue formers or sprue bases. And then cylinders go on top, or right, get over, and it gets poured with something called investment, which is just like plaster. And then you take off the sprue formers, you melt out the wax, and you can either pour in, that's a gravity casting, we don't really do that, or you can spin it around in a centrifuge, and that's what I do. And you heat up your metal in a crucible and it spins around. Okay. So here are pieces that just came out of the centrifuge, they're still wet. And I'm a little cavalier when I sprue because I want things to happen. Like I want things to not fill completely. And so right here you can see this pancake didn't fill. But if you look up here, I cut off the sprues, here it is, and I did another casting on it, which is called, if you cast metal onto metal, it's called an inclusion casting. And this piece was called pancake. So what I was doing is a Japanese method of repair called kintsukuroi, and many of you may have heard if a piece of pottery breaks, often in Japan they'll repair it with lacquer in gold, silver, or platinum. And so I kind of I started to repair my jewelry and celebrate imperfections. And you can see the fingerprints in that piece. So this way of working really allows me to fuse this metaphysical experience of like working in the periphery of my eye with conscious engagement. And this is the one I'm wearing today. The resulting work is physical evidence of my quotidian experience or existence, right? That's cone with paddle. And as ornament, these biomorphic forms invite the wearer to touch. And if you look at the paddle on the right, that little piece of gold is so heavy, so the piece just always sat in that position. And as ornament, you want to explore their surfaces. And I created a few simple rules with this series. Waxes are manipulated only with my fingers. All major imperfections that occur during the casting process are overtly repaired. So I have to go back because there was a hole in that one, and that is the biggest gold rivet I ever made. It's about the diameter of a pencil eraser. All blemishes are embellished. Color is applied with enamel and resin. And I didn't use baked enamel because it would crack. Like in a pendant, pendant and jewelry, pendants, jewelry, rings get a lot of usage. And if I did enamel it, it could crack or break. And evidence of fingerprints was left to see. And that's the last one. That was one of my favorite ones. Okay, so I was ready, and look who's here. Oh my gosh, I invited two amazing alumni to help me rebuild my studio, and one of them is here, Allie Keys. Allie Keys did not read, helped me. It was the most grueling, hottest, horrible job. And we scrubbed the fieldstone walls down, and they helped me paint it, and it was amazing. Thank you. So it was like a year later. I'm like almost ready to move in, and then I broke my wrist. Right. So I wasn't able to teach in the spring, but I had oodles of time. Right. So I got to think. I got to read. We got a puppy. And this is when the lockets came along. Okay. So we're kind of at the end. I know it's getting a little hot in here, so bear with me. I always wanted to learn how to engrave. And here as my wrist was healing, I was like, I want to engrave. I want to learn how to engrave. So I realized with pneumatic engraving, with modern technology, I can engrave. And I took a workshop. It was a week-long workshop, and those are the pieces I made. I studied with a master, and he's pretty amazing, Jason Marchiafava. And I learned pneumatic engraving. I will never be a master at it or a mistress at it, but I can engrave, and I'm really excited that I have that skill. And on the right, it just made sense because I have full dexterity of my fingers and hands, but hammering is not something that's I should be doing too often. So with hydraulic die forming, it's a way to hammer. And I brought some of the dies, and you can see it in the gallery. This is the first folio form from a locket I made. And our youngest child, Beatrix, is holding it in her hand. And on the right is my grandmother, my Lithuanian grandmother, and who had a big influence on me. And her mother, my great-grandmother, was Mariona Sestakauskis, and they changed their name to Chester when they came over. I love some of that lineage. And I just loved these pieces because our youngest now is going to be 14. That picture of my grandmother is 14. It just had a nice symmetry. So thinking about the locket and its anatomy, I'm borrowing here from Rene Magritte. Historically, lockets are hinged folios, right? They open and close with a satisfying click. It's the most binary form of jewelry I know, right? And I had time to draw and explore and think about the taxonomy of a locket. I'm actually making the drawing on the right-hand side. And here are some of the drawings. What if I start to disarrange, rearrange the parts? What if I amplify the satisfying click? What if I repeat elements? What if certain elements change scale? So, what is taxonomy? It's a branch of science concerned with classification and organization. So when I look at this, and you look at the ribbon here up on the right-hand side, here's the ribbon, and my idea was to continue like an engraved pattern. And then your eye could slip that pattern through the bail, and it could come up. And then down here, the ribbon, the engraving would make way for the ribbon, like a parting for it to come down. And at this time, I was invited to be in an exhibition called Revolution, organized by Ioana Lalaunis, the director of the Lalaunis Museum in Athens, Greece. And if you ever travel to Greece, it's at the base of the Acropolis. And one of my students who came on the trip is sitting right here. You've got to go. You have to go see that museum because it's historical and contemporary. So I decided if I was going to make a piece, I wanted it to be big, bold, and like something Dolly Parton would wear. I wanted it over the top, overflowing, and this is what I made. So, patriotic gesture to be worn close to the heart. It has a long title. Constructed with beads and needles made in China, thread made in Mexico, and silver responsibly sourced in the US of A. So being invited to the show, the piece isn't in the show because it's too dolly. It doesn't fit in the show. Patrick and I were like, nope, it doesn't fit in there. But, let's see. Oh, that's good. Oh, it's 3 folios, but it borrows from the language of the locket, right? It allowed me to not stick to the 2 folio conformity. Okay, and in the back, and this is what it is. Initially, I thought this would be the front of the piece because I wanted everybody to be reflected in it, and that's how I originally designed it. But when I display it, it makes more sense, right? It's just like spewing with enthusiasm. It just, okay. So here's a little video of sewing the beads. The beads that came from China were on this ribbon, and I had to sew them. And it was hours of sewing. Let's see. Okay. And there they are all sewn together. And I was like, I had to figure out how to get them in there. And for the first exhibit, to be honest, I used Velcro, all true confessions. And so I made these little embroidery hoops with a little flange. And then you can see on the left, I'm kind of marking, okay, where am I going to drill that flange? And then I did, and I lined it up. And then I set it with a little miniature machine screw. But it took a while to engineer that. Like, it worked in my head and then to figure it out. And then you can see the chain. And I actually brought that piece, so you can see it does look big up there. It looks small on my screen. And then I started with a series that's in the gallery. This piece is called 4-in-1. And 4-in-1 is sort of, for anybody who's a maker, it's an insider's joke because it's a rasp, like a 4-sided rasp, and we use it for filing wood and sometimes wax. Okay, so here we go. So here's the picture, right? And I'm going to do that again because it's really fun. So when I started doing that, I was like, oh my gosh, I got to animate these. And I happened to have an animation student in my class, and her name's Natalie Stewie, and she knew the software. I knew what I wanted to do, and she helped me animate. And so that's at the end. That's sort of the grand finale. Here's Couplet. We now have a laser welder in our studio, and I laser weld these knuckles because they're so tiny, and then I have to resolder them. And in my taxonomy, I decide to consider each part of the locket as being important. I try to break down the hierarchies, right? And this piece shares autonomy. Like the spine is like, the hinges are the spine. And the engraving, of course, becomes autonomous. You can see it, again, parting for the ribbon. And the bail becomes decorative, finally gets to become decorative. It's always in service or in function. And there it is open. In the gallery, it's closed, but you'll see it. Inside has red velvet. And this is so that's X and Y. And before it's engraved, I had just drawn the scroll work, which is American scroll work, because I'm an American, which is rooted in economy of space and line and affordability, as opposed to when you look at some of the Persian and even some of the German and the English scroll work, it covers every square inch, and whereas the American, it breathes a little more. Okay. So again, the engraving is acting with autonomy. It's choosing to follow gravity, and it's really its own path. It's not being symmetrical and repetitive. And really, in this piece, it's the first time the bail, I think, gains its true autonomy, because in the other one, we're still slipping the ribbon through. But this piece led to big bail. And that bail, so that's my soldering, it's a very large bail. You can see it, this piece is in the show. And in this piece, it's not only decorative, but it's emboldened. Right? It's very, very large. So there's a functioning bail and a big one. A couple of these, Troy's going to help me photograph these on the body because the sense of scale gets lost in the photos. And we're almost done, just to let you know. This is, I wanted to share with you my process of making a locket and dipping it in wax. And I dip it a few times to get a specific thickness so I can cast it. They don't always come out. Oops. Excuse me, we'll go from there to there. And this is how, we'll go here. So here's one that I dipped. Here's another one that I dipped. And then I attached it with this sprue. And that's where the gold will enter in. I had to support it with this metal structure. And then this is what it looks like. And then I had to recarve the drip. And so that one was successful, even though, you know, I had dipped it up higher. That's a successful cast for me, because this is what usually happens. They don't usually come out. And as beautiful as these are, they're very heavy. You can't wear them. And here's another spruing system. And then I have to cut all those off. And then, so that one is also in the show. Okay. And here's how they were exhibited. And ultimately, these lockets become the subject of interest rather than their insides. And to be fully experienced, they need to be held, they need to be opened. And so that's what encouraged me to do the video. And here we go. Oh, we need sound. Michael, we need sound.
Yeah, that's just.
Oh, it's me? Okay, sorry, wait a minute. Wait, I want to start from the beginning. Hold on. Oh, shoot, darn it. Hold on, hold on, everything, okay. How did that just happen? Okay.
Turn up your volume.
Yeah, I want to just go back.
We can pause the video.
Can we, oh, there we go, okay. Phew, okay. Okay, I'm going to turn the volume all the way up. I love that our 13-year-old is telling me how to. Short ones, they're under like 3 seconds. So they're in a frame and then all of a sudden it turns black, so it becomes a mirror and you see yourself. Okay. So there's another one, I'll show you. It's coming. Get ready. And one of the funnest experiences was shopping for sound. I had never done that before, right? I know there's a DJ in the audience too. It was like you go on, it was the most metaphysical experience and you had to remember, oh, this is this by this, by this, by this. And then for the last one, I wanted a dripping sound. And one of the most lonely sounds is water dripping in a pail. I thought that's what I wanted for a drip sound. And so I ended up going with, it's a trumpet. And it's much more fun and welcoming and happy, and it's not dripping in a pail. Now that I really listen to that, I think it's more cello. The musicians out there might be able to tell me. And so just finally, to paraphrase the words of critic A.O. Scott, the artist's job is to show us something we didn't know we needed to see. And I hope I've done that for you tonight. Thank you. So if you have any questions, you can, I know it's a little warm in here. I have a piece that I brought, and then I don't know where it went. Let's see.
A wooden box.
Maybe it's in the wooden box.
The
Here it
piece
is.
by
Oh,
the
it's
lamp.
holding the lamp. There we go. Let's see. Let me just move this lamp. I think I can turn this lamp off. There we go. So if there's any questions, please.
Just a quick
Ashley.
one. Near the end of your slides, when you were showing the dipping
Yes,
ones that failed,
yes.
or whatever you want to call it, not different. So, so you, because before you show that you took the locket and you dipped it in the wax.
Yes.
But are you casting it off? Like the locket parts had, melted and ruined too. Yeah. So
Did I get there? No, I passed it. There we go.
The next one,
Next
the
one.
next one,
Yeah.
that one. So you lost all of those lockets? Let's say?
Yes, yeah.
All right, so you didn't like dip it and then like have the dip thing cast and then put it on your locket?
No, I tried, and it just does, I can't, like, there's a beautiful moment that happened, look at the shoulder.
Right.
See this?
Right.
Like, that moment is
Yeah.
so exquisite, and I can't do it with, like, carving a separate piece and making it, like,
The
So-
wax won't come off the locket once you've dipped it.
Yeah. So
no,
then-
it won't, and it will shrink.
Yeah.
So then when you cast it, you're just hoping that the silver part doesn't melt, or,
I've done
Right.
like many tests.
but the silver's in there when
The
you're.
silver, it's an inclusion, the silver,
Wow.
I'm alloying different golds
Yeah.
to try and make it flow more.
I've never
Which
seen this.
is, yeah, so there's we can talk tech
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
want. But yeah, it's been a process.
It's cool.
Thanks. Any other questions out there?
Hi, so I actually have, my question was related to this as well. The failed ones, could you remelt them, or would that just change the alloy? Like, is there a way to recycle
Good.
it after?
Absolutely, yes, and all that, yeah. I can, I'm waiting for gold to go up even a little bit more before I cash it in. But if I melt them down myself, there's solder in there and it's a
Yeah.
contaminant, Nada,
Yeah,
so.
that's why I was wondering, like,
Yeah.
is there a way to separate the gold from the silver after, or not?
Yeah, and there, some of the ways are toxic, but for the most part, I send it out to a refinery to do that for me. That does it in a really a clean way.
Okay, and then do they give you the cost of it?
Yeah, whatever you prefer.
Okay.
You can order gold back,
That
or
makes
you can get a check, whatever you
Okay.
want. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
For those wax molds, once you make the plaster, the wax melt, can you make multiple casting from it or just one?
If you make a mold, absolutely. So when I was molding the body, I was using like AlgaSafe, or even, has anybody had their teeth done? It's Alganet, right? It's based off of seaweed, it's completely safe. And you can pour many waxes in an Alganet mold.
But she was asking about the plaster.
The plaster was more of a reinforcement. Okay.
So you can cast only one metal thing out of your wax molds or many?
I can, if I make a mold of my wax, I can inject a mold and make like hundreds if I want.
If you only have one piece of wax and use it, it's gone. But
And that's
if you
why
make a mold
it's-
from it, then you
gone.
can make more waxes.
Yeah, and that's why it's called lost wax. It's what, I think it goes as far back, probably farther than the Egyptians too. So we use something called investment, which looks like plaster, and we use, it's actually a silica, which looks like little tiny pieces of fibers going in different directions. And they would use clay with hay or grasses, which would also support it. It's the same, it's the same technology really. But yeah, we can talk about it more when we walk the dogs. But yeah, there are ways to make multiples. And some of, on my feeds that I like to watch on Instagram, some of them are technology, and I love watching people cast multiples and how they sprue their trees, and there's like 100 pieces in one casting. I can share those with you. Thank you.
What were you gonna show us?
What was I going to show? Oh, I was going to show you. Of course, I'll put this down. Let's see. And you can come up and look at this. Whoops, I pulled that the wrong way. There we go. This is you get a sense of the size of it. Oops, there we go. So here it is. That's what's that? Yeah, you can walk around.
No, I think he was asking if I should put it on.
I guess.
Oh, can you put it on and walk, you want to hold it and walk around? Yeah.
Move down.
Yeah, you can hold it. And, yeah, go ahead.
In terms of putting that on the neck, that crossing has to be way down.
Yeah. That doesn't look terribly wearable to me because the chains are.
Yes.
If you really want, I think Dolly would wear it.
The back of that photo when you were beading was beautiful, the back side of the beaded.
Thank you. So some folks were asking like, well, why did you feel like you needed to take these out? And it's like, well, jewelry is, I mean, how often have you taken your jewelry to the jeweler? Jewelry gets wear and tear. It's like a car, it needs maintenance, it needs to be repaired. Jewelry it's not like a painting that stays on the wall and doesn't get touched. So, you know, Fabergé eggs, they all come, they're brilliantly designed, they all come apart, and so all of these can easily come out in case it gets scratched and I need to polish the back. You're all welcome to come up here and look at it if you want.
The bead work, you can separate it from the
Yeah, so I can take it out. So these screws, it tortured me to have these little screws here. I didn't want screws, but it doesn't matter.
So the screw that we're seeing in the photo has to do with how this is
Yeah,
attached.
it holds them in. So yeah, all that ribbon work and all that sewing is hidden, but it's nice to know that it's there.